I'm U.S. Senator Thom Tillis, and this is The Elephant in the Room.
Welcome to The Elephant in the Room. I'm your host, Cyrus Pearson.
I'm your co-host, Sophie Delkay.
And what did you learn from our senator today, who was U.S. Senator Thom Tillis from the great state of North Carolina?
I'm so embarrassed because I learned something. I learned about a sport that apparently has been a sport for a very long time. I learned what disc golf was.
I played it in high school, so you are correct. It has been there for a very long time. Now, we covered a lot of topics with Senator Tillis, and we didn't go into the explanatory details necessarily, so let's give you a quick rundown of some of the things you're going to hear. PricewaterhouseCoopers is, of course...
big consulting firm.
Right. He mentions Pat McCrory, who was the governor of North Carolina and ran against Ted Budd in the Republican primary for U.S. Senate. Ted Budd, obviously, who's been on the show, was a great guest. You can look that episode up. He won. Pat Toomey, the former U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, known for his intelligence. Cassidy, Senator Bill Cassidy.
We've had here, so
Absolutely.
You should know who that is.
Lloyd Austin, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, who was out of pocket without the apparent knowledge of the White House for a while due to issues related to prostate treatment on cancer. And Roy Blunt, the former U.S. Senator from Missouri. So when you hear those people brought up in the podcast, now you know. Now you can just sit back and enjoy. Here's the senator. Senator Tillis, thank you so much for joining us today on The Elephant in the Room.
Thank you.
I want to start with something I think is a little weird. We're going to go over a bunch of different random things. And when we did the pre-show, Sophie said about a lot of the things we had about you, that's weird. So
Excellent.
Let's
In a good way.
Yeah, I don't
Let's
care.
see.
Good or bad.
So first off, your name is Thom Tillis, T-H-O-M.
Yep.
Okay, and your father is named Thomas Tillis?
My father's Thomas Raymond. My brother is Thomas Richard. My other brother is Thomas Ronald. My son is Thomas Ryan. And my nephew is Thomas Roman. And even got a tattoo to celebrate the TRT. It's something my dad started. Yeah.
What is up with that?
What's the love for Thomas?
My dad, it's really weird because he came from, he ended up, he was born in 1929, was in an orphanage. He stayed in contact with his mom. Mom just couldn't afford to feed him and a daughter, so she put one out to foster homes. But he really had like a sense of family, and I think his father's name was Thomas Braxton. So he started with a nod towards his father, who died before he was a year old. But then he added the R, and I've maintained the tradition. Honestly, the first time I met my wife of 37 years, went on the first date, I really fell head over heels with her. She reminds me on the first date, I said, I don't know where this relationship's going to go, but if it goes anywhere, I may be in public service someday, and if I have a son, his name has to be Thomas Ryan Tillis. That was in the first date.
And that came true.
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So do you think that your younger Thomases will carry on their tradition?
I think so.
They have to.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and it was great for me when I was younger because I moved out of home when I was 17, and I had to go get electricity turned on, and I was able to avoid the deposit because they thought my dad was just creating electricity at another place. I said, I'm Thomas Tillis. Didn't cover the tank.
What would happen when
hilarious.
people called up and asked, is Tom there?
Well, they all varied. We all varied names. My dad used Tom, but my younger brothers went by their middle names. And the other story is I didn't start spelling my name Thom. That was when I was watching a game show. It was very similar to Jeopardy back in the late 70s. And there was the Scandinavian who'd become the Grand Master. I was 20 years old. I was working in professional business at that time in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I said, man, he spells his name Thom. I said, I'm going to start doing this. The next morning, I just went into the office, started spelling Thom. Everybody just assumed I always had and never noticed it. So I rebranded overnight. Yeah.
That's
That's
amazing.
hilarious.
Yeah. Do you think women ever get named the same thing? If you had two sisters, Sophie, and they were both named Sophie, could you imagine that?
No, I don't think my family
I
would
think
do that.
It happens a lot for men, though.
Yeah,
But we also have a
George
bunch of
Foreman.
friends.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
I was going
He
to bring
set
that
the
up.
bar.
Yeah,
He did.
yeah.
He
I was going to bring up Newhart. I think Sophie's a little young for that.
Yeah.
So we have by age 17, your family had moved 20 times.
Yeah.
So why?
I've looked at it. It's evolved over time. I just thought it was mainly we were lower on a good year. We were middle income. Most of the time, we were below. We would have been considered lower class versus middle class family. My dad was always looking for a way to make money, and he didn't graduate from high school, but he had gotten a draftsman certificate, so he would do boat drafting work, and that took him between Jacksonville, Florida, Port City to New Orleans, and then to Nashville because there was a big dredge industry there. So we moved. But now I've since decided a lot of my dad's desire was to stay away from my hometown. The Tillis side of the family has a very dark history, and I think that my dad really wanted to keep us away from that. And it didn't occur until long after his death in the mid-'90s. But I only knew my grandmother and one second uncle on the Tillis side of the family, although they lived all over Jacksonville. And then I just found out about a month or so ago that Russell Tillis, who is about my age, would be a part of that family, is now in prison in Florida for serial rape and murder. So,
Wow.
Oh my
talking
gosh.
rough folks. But anyway, I think
Yeah.
my dad was smart enough to get us away from that.
Wow,
And thank
yeah,
goodness
good
that he
dad.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So today, has that had an effect on you? Do you enjoy moving around? Is that ingrained, or would you rather stay in one place?
No, I think it really created an expectation on my part that about every 12 or 18 months I was going somewhere else. I remember when I left that job in Chattanooga, I got recruited to a high-tech industry in Boston, and a guy gave me a hat that said, "I'm here for a good time, not a long time." And that really was the essence of my life, because after my wife and I married, I've lived in 9 states and 2 countries.
Wow.
And a good portion of that movement from Tennessee to Georgia to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Virginia, I just kept that streak going.
Wow.
Well, let's go chronologically. So you graduated from high school. I think you went to community college. So where were you at that time? What led you to move to another country?
Well, what happened was I have 5 brothers and sisters. 3 of them did not graduate from high school. My mother and father didn't graduate from high school. And so I'm in high school, but I'm 13th out of almost 400 kids. I aced every AP course that was
Wow.
available. I was president of the student body, Beta Club, Honor Society, et cetera. You'd think you'd kind of build a case for a scholarship, but I was wired to go into the military. So I did delayed entry for the Air Force in January, roughly, of 1978. And a month before my graduation, I was involved in a car accident that required me to get discharged because I had to get my hand reconstructed. So I was discharged. Now, all of a sudden, I hadn't pursued college, didn't even know how to do it, to be honest with you. And I also moved out of home June of that year. I was 17 years old and went to work at a warehouse, and then subsequently decided this is not how I want to live my life. So I started going to a community college. At the time, it was called Nashville State Technical Institute. We all called it Nasty.
That's funny.
And took courses there, and then did less than a year of work there, almost probably the equivalent of a half of an academic year. Really launched my career, and 3 years later, I'm at Wang Laboratories in Boston, working in research and development.
Wow.
Yep. And then finished my degree. To finish the story, I didn't finish my degree until a year after I'd been admitted to the partnership at Price Waterhouse, about 17 years later.
Did they
That's
push you to do that, or
incredible.
was that something you
I had
wanted to
already
do?
been pursuing it, and so PW hired me, which is very uncommon. It's uncommon to hire somebody without a degree at Price
Yeah.
Waterhouse.
Right.
It almost never. In fact, the people I worked with in that office, it had never happened, and certainly even less common that you would get admitted to the partnership. But I had been just continually working on my degree, and it was just coincident that I was able to get my final credits done about a year after I made partner.
We have a lot of younger listeners. They aren't familiar with a lot of these things. Could you real quickly describe PricewaterhouseCoopers, a juggernaut?
PricewaterhouseCoopers, in my opinion, is the blue chip firm based on its client base. It was always considered to be the best of the best. Now, if you talk to Deloitte, they would say the same thing. But at the time that I was there, our clients and the number of clients who were blue chip companies was undisputed. And so it was management consulting in my case. And you had CPAs, audit, tax, accounting, and we worked on multidisciplinary teams. That's what took me from Northern Virginia, where I made partner, down to North Carolina, because at that point I was in the banking practice, and I went down there to help Nations Bank with its acquisitions that ultimately led to becoming Bank of America. But it's a good rock. I tell all my staff, and I tell any young person, you will never regret spending a couple of years working at a top tier consulting firm. You will learn methods, dispute resolution, and tools that you can apply to anything, because every single day I apply them in the U.S. Senate.
Now, your start, I know there's a lot of misinformation online, but is it fair to say you became a U.S. Senator, you were led down that path by starting a push for a local bike trail?
Yeah, it is, because when I moved from Northern Virginia to Charlotte area, it's Lake Norman area, buddies of mine turned me on to mountain biking. I hadn't done it, and I immediately took to it. I love
How old were
single
you
track.
at that point?
It was
20s, teens, 30s?
Oh gosh, no, it was in I would have been in my 40s.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it was like 19. It was right around 2000, right?
Okay.
And so I would have been 40, or right, maybe 38, 39 when I picked it up. But really aggressive. Got into more intermediate to advanced single track, complex technical trails were my favorite. And so I also obedience trained dogs. So this time I was obedience training a boxer, and I'd found these woods. One of my favorite things to do is train a dog a down stay position, and then run into the woods and make them stay until I hide. We play hide and seek. So
It's so fun.
I'm like this 40-year-old guy
Yeah.
playing hide and seek with a boxer in these woods. And I looked around one day
And a
said-
boxer, that's
I
impressive.
said, man, this would just be a great place for a single track trail. So I went to the town commission, management consultant, partner with my PowerPoint, and they said, good presentation. If you come and volunteer on the board, you get a good chance of getting that done.
Oh.
Didn't happen. I got on the board. I ended up finding all kinds of other things that I was interested in, an at-risk youth center, all these things. And so that led to me being on the town council, and then a couple of years later challenging someone who had been on the town council, who went to the legislature, who was a total bomb-throwing jerk. So I challenged him to a primary and won the primary and was in the
gosh.
legislature. If it hadn't been for that mountain bike trail, I'd probably just be writing checks and supporting good candidates. I wouldn't necessarily gone down this path.
That's incredible. We have a local issue. I live in Old Town Alexandria, and I'm like, my fiance laughs at me because I'm so passionate about it. But you're kind of making me realize that, getting involved in your local politics could lead you down
It does.
a longer political path. So I'm like,
Yeah. Well, be careful, because
Yeah.
it really got me into a very expensive, time-consuming hobby that I call being a U.S. Senator.
right. I think I'll stick to biking or mountain bike or something, playing with dogs.
Now, you were Speaker of the House in North Carolina. What made you decide to take it up and become senator?
Well, I didn't.
Or try
actually.
to. Okay.
I had, when I first ran against this guy who was a Republican incumbent, I said that I was only going to serve for 4 terms. And I was balancing business. And at that point, we'd sold the management consulting business unit to IBM. So now I'm a partner at IBM Global Business Services. And I was still able to work with IBM to do the legislature. But in 2009, so I'd done it from 2007. Now fast forward, it's 2009. Barack Obama's in power. You got everybody saying the rise of liberal progressivism, the demise of conservatism. I thought 2010 was going to be a banner year for North Carolina. At that point, we had only been in the majority one other time in 100 years.
Wow.
But I decided if we had adult supervision, if we recruited the right candidates, we raised money, we could win. So I quit my job at IBM and became, at that point, after my freshman term, I ran for whip. I was elected whip. And then from that perch, I ran to be the campaign chair so that we could field good candidates and run. We got a majority. Then I was elected speaker. So after 2 terms in the minority. But I was done. I was going to leave and go back. In fact, was talking with people about, with Deloitte and some of the other firms, to potentially go back as a direct admit partner. We get ready for this cycle. It's clear North Carolina could be a majority maker. The bar scene at Star Wars shows up for the primary filers for the Republican side. None of them in my judgment, could have beaten the incumbent at the time. I was actually actively trying to recruit someone else. I had offered someone who's since passed away and said that, you want to run for the Senate, I'll be your finance manager. So I didn't have a burning desire to clear the field. I had a burning desire to field North Carolina as a majority maker. That didn't happen, so I decided to run then.
Wow.
And actually, it's the first time that this seat has actually had the same senator in it for 2 consecutive terms since Jesse Helms. The seat that I'm in tends to turn over every 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want him to steal your thunder. This podcast is about you. But you introduced Ted Budd the night he won the Senate seat. What's it like working with him, and do you like him?
Ted's good.
Can you answer
I
that?
I like Ted a lot. He's got a great sense of humor, and I've had some people, because primaries, people get different perceptions of everybody, and it was like I've told Ted and Pat McCrory, I said it's like I had 2 brothers or cousins, beating up each other in a primary, but Ted won, and there's so far some people that supported Pat McCrory said, what's this guy going to be like? As if I'm going to say, not too good, and I've told them all that I really believe that we will look back a couple of years from now. Ted's going to define himself. But if you want to get an idea of who he's going to be like, I completely believe he's going to carry himself and come into the room with the same credibility as Pat Toomey. A very
Smart guy.
thoughtful, sound conservative. Nothing's personal. It's about the policy. But North Carolina's going to benefit from somebody like him being my partner up here.
We loved him, and I actually met Mrs. Budd, and I have to say he's going to kill me for saying this, but I like her even more.
Amy Kate challenges him in a primary,
so
and he
wonderful.
is toast.
Yeah.
He may have been able to beat Pat McCrory, but Ted Budd could not beat his wife, and I couldn't beat mine, by the way.
Let's talk about some random subjects. I don't know that this is going to be chronological order. Animals. You're big into animals. Maybe you had a cat walking business in high school?
Again.
No. I was an early stage entrepreneur. That was
Okay.
1968 when I was about 9 years old in West Wego, Louisiana. Next door neighbor had a cat, and she told me if I would walk it, that she would pay me money, and if not money, she'd pay me with fresh baked biscuits that I would bring home, and I walked that cat down a sidewalk like most people would a dog. And my brothers and sister, I always had walking around money, because before I did the cat walking, I would do any kinds of odd jobs. And they made fun of me. I said, last time I checked, I'm the only one with change in my pocket. And it's been ever since. I mean, I got my worker's permit when I was 12 and haven't missed a year since then paying into Social Security. So I love working.
Wow.
You host the Congressional Dog Halloween. No typo there.
Bipartisan Halloween.
Yeah,
There you
I love it. So cute.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. You can go online and see pictures of it.
Yeah,
I think.
we just had a lot of fun. I mean, my God, I don't know why anybody has to take things personally here, but we do, and you just internalize it. It puts people further away and just makes it less pleasant, but also less productive. So we had the idea of, people love dogs, so let's just do a parade. The first year we did it, I was in the other office in Dirksen, and my staff came. I said, oh, yeah, that's great. Let's do it. All of a sudden, we come out. We've got like 40, 50 dogs and about 150 people, and the Hart Capitol Police thought it was some sort of spontaneous protest. I went to the Capitol Police. I said, guys, the dogs have costumes on. I think they're pretty friendly. So that moved us. We moved over to the Hart Atrium, and then the rest is history. I mean, we had a huge one last year. I had COVID, so I had Mitt Romney stand in for me. He did a great job as the master of ceremonies, but we had close to 100 dogs and probably 400 people all around. So it's fun. Let's chuckle a little.
Did you go to the last one?
Well, I mean, you can't avoid it. For people who don't know.
I went for my first time this year.
There's a big atrium in the middle. It's got to be 9 stories tall at least. And it's filled with dogs and owners in costumes and everybody having a great time.
It's
and
so
the costumes are funny. I brought in, I've named one dog. His name's Mitch. So I've got a dog named Mitch. I named after the leader. Little Mitch come up here to meet Big Mitch. And so Mitch.
Have they met?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
he's going to have pictures in Big Mitch's archives. But I actually, so Little Mitch came up last year, and he was obviously dressed up as Big Mitch. So he had a toupee, a blue blazer, and khaki pants. And then Theo, he's a Cocker Spaniel Poodle mix. Theo, who is named after Theodore Roosevelt. I name all my dogs after conservatives I admire. He's a Bernese Mountain Standard Poodle mix, so he's an 85-pounder. But I called Kirsten Cinema. I said, "Do you mind if he goes as Kirsten?" So he was in leopard leggings and a classic Kirsten thing. It was a lot of fun.
So if you get a third dog, it has to be a politician you admire. Who would be the third name?
You know what? I'm looking at some of the members over in the House. I mentioned today there's a couple of members over there that are in the short list, but I'm not going to tell you who they are.
Would have made a good story.
Look, I've had Reagan. I've had Maggie for Margaret Thatcher. I've had Ike for Eisenhower. I've had Abe. So I've run through, a pretty long list of dogs and obedience trained dogs. I always have at least 2. I think at my height I had 4 at the same time. But
what do you love about dogs? I know it's a weird question, but some people are animal people, some aren't. It sounds like you definitely are.
I am. I think because my first dog was a pit bull boxer mix, and it was just after I'd married my wife. My sister just said, "You're getting it." It's a litter that she had from down in South Georgia, and my wife was convinced. My wife was pregnant with my daughter at the time, and she was convinced she'd married a redneck. She's born and raised in Boston, and now he's going to get a pit bull that's going to eat our first child. So that's when I really took to getting obedience training right. And that dog, her name was Scarlet. That's before I started the tradition of conservatives, but we lived in Atlanta, so I thought Scarlet made sense. But after that, I got really serious about obedience training. And my dogs, they know 30, 40 commands. And I can teach these dogs a command over a couple of days pretty
And they
easily.
enjoy that interaction, don't they?
They love it.
They do,
They're communicating. They love it. It's enriching. And the Theo, the 85-pounder, just looks like a teddy bear. But I can get him to not look like a teddy bear, which is good for personal security.
I might need to bring Cadbury to you.
He kind of looks like Cujo, actually.
Let's talk about some other stuff. We've got a ton out of office activities. I did not know you're an avid pickleball player.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'll be playing tomorrow morning up in the Senate. I play with my staff almost every Wednesday morning. We go up there around 7:15 or so and play for an hour or two.
That's so fun.
When did you get into that?
This year or last year.
Yeah.
Staff talked about it. We got the office of the architect to lay down tape and started playing. I love it.
What did you? I mean, it's been around a while, and I played my first game last year, and I thought, it's old people. Like, is it really that fun?
It's
so
fun.
fun.
It's fast. I get up and
It's fast.
and I play. I played a lot of racquetball. I played tennis when I was in high school, and then moved up to New England. Racquetball was really popular, and I got pretty good tournament level racquetball play.
Oh.
And so if you're accustomed to a racket sport, you can adapt pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The thing with me is I still love just like throwing fire across. You got to learn how to dink it because it really is in positioning, but boy, it feels good when you slam a ball.
Do you try to slam it when you can?
Oh, I do. And I'm kind of, if we've got a new staff, but like some of this, I've told my staff, you better not pull any punches because I'm not going to pull any punches. This is about fun.
I kind of want to show up.
I kinda do too.
You ought to. So I don't buy this. And that's why I've made an example of, serving them heat and then countering them with heat and spiking them if they're in the way. So it's a lot of fun.
It is so fun.
I played one game, and then I spent the next 3 weeks just watching pickleball videos on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
That is weird. You get the weird now.
I'll take it.
No, I like it. But also, a thing I play the most, though, is disc golf. I've been playing disc golf for about 15 years.
So what the heck is disc golf?
Think about golf. The same rules, out of bounds, everything else. A bag with 10 to 20 discs. I probably have about 20 discs that are drivers, fairway, putt, approach, specialty discs like wedges.
Okay.
It's been it's gotten really popular post COVID. I mean, you've got pros now that have $10 million endorsement contracts.
So instead of
Seen that on
sorry, this is
TV.
going to be so ignorant, but instead of hitting a ball, you hit a disc?
No, you don't hit. You throw. So these discs that you
Imagine
throw the
frisbee.
disc like it's a frisbee, but it's very specialized, tight edge, and they're very picky. Just like a good driver, you got to know how to swing it. And then the course, you've got the same par, so you got baskets that you throw into instead of holes, and The difference
That sounds
between golf is
fun.
it's not wide open. I mean, you're in woods, so you could have a fairway that 20 yards out from the tee pad is only is between two trees, that width that you have to get through, and you have some holes that are 600 foot, 700
Wow.
foot holes.
And you do you throw overhand and underhand?
Both. You
and
do forehand, you can do a tomahawk, you can do a backhand.
That sounds really fun.
And you know what?
yeah.
It's the reason it's a lot of fun is it's a guaranteed about a 3 mile hike, and the bag weighs about 20 pounds. So I get a power walk in,
Yeah.
and I play with my son and my son-in-law, and I can still play competitively with them on any given day. We like playing skins usually on Saturday. It's a lot of fun, and we usually push. Every once in a while, one of us will run away with it, but most of the time it's pushing or winning a hole. But
How good are these pros? Because I've seen them on like ESPN
unbelievable.
3 or something like that.
Really?
I've seen.
Yeah.
I had no idea this existed.
Female women pro. There's a disc golf channel. There are tournaments. North Carolina is one of the meccas for a lot of the world championships.
Oh my
they play there
gosh.
several times, and like I said, you've got Innova is one of the disc makers. They've signed $2 million contract. A guy named McBride, and he's worth every penny of it because he's extraordinary in his mid-30s. But you're talking about people throwing 600 feet with accuracy.
Wow.
I'm not talking about just throwing it down there. Hope something
Right.
happens. It's like you know where the pin is, and they're hitting with the same accuracy that pro golfers do, relatively.
And did you say it's a lot of pro golfers who have turned to disc golf, or they're
it's
usually
just-
different?
Just all the
athletes?
rule, and most of these kids, like pro golfers now, they're all younger. But most of the top tier pro, it's uncommon. One of the world most high rated is in his early mid 30s, but it's uncommon. Most of these kids are 18, 20.
So you say really active.
Yeah, I do. I
Do you still do mountain biking or dirt biking?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've got a specialized single track Epic
Nice.
in my garage that I don't get out as much as I wanted to, and I love downhill too. I mean, I like going out west. It was in Alyeska, did downhill mountain biking there. You go up and basically ride the black trails down.
Wow.
But it's in the middle of the summer, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to hurt yourself.
Have you
Yeah.
gotten in any big accidents?
Oh yeah, I've broken a toe, broken a collarbone.
Oh my
had to walk
gosh.
out
Collarbone?
mile
What
and a
happened
half,
that
had to
time?
walk out a mile and a half. You know, it's funny. Most of the injuries happen on the easier ones because you lull yourself into thinking you mastered it. The one that I broke my collarbone on, I was going over about a 3-foot ramp. I was probably 4 or 5 feet in the air.
Oh my gosh.
All of a sudden, I'm coming down. There's a tree between me and where I needed to land. And
Oh, no.
the tree won. Yeah, that was one
Oh
where
my
they
gosh.
will.
I'd broken my collarbone. My arm was hanging down by my side. There was no
Oh
way
my
I was leaving
gosh.
my bike there, so I had to walk about a mile and a half out of
That's
the woods
crazy.
and then get treatment.
You got no choice. Have you been heavy mountain biking, Sophie?
I haven't. When I was out in Sedona, though, we saw a bunch of mountain bikers, and it looks like really hard work.
It is, but it's all technical. It's like, I'm 63, so I can still, hammer up a hill. But
It's
I know when I
impressive.
get to the top, most people, I don't, a lot of times won't use my brake by design. I want to force myself into figuring out how to get through obstacles, and that's where all the young bucks that got up the hill sooner are like falling on the sides and tackling their wheels because they don't know how to handle the technicals.
It's not just like rolling hills. I mean, when you're mountain biking, you could have a hill as steep as the studio.
It's
you're in,
slow.
Oh, yeah.
right?
We've had, I went out, spent 3 days in Moab, Utah, and you're talking about riding
Wow.
on boulders where you have a 40-foot drop into a U, and then you got 20
Yeah.
feet to come out. And if you don't use momentum, it's virtually impossible to get out.
So that's what I saw in Sedona.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we had that group. We had 4 out there, and we had a handful that ended up having to get another bike because they destroyed the first one.
No way.
Yeah, rental. You got to get the extra coverage.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Sounds
I
fun,
can't.
though.
It's a
I can't.
blast.
When-
It'll
when-
keep your
so
you
heart
picked
rate. That's
that-
why my heart rate's so low.
You picked
Wow.
that up later in life. When did you pick up the disc golfing?
About 15 years ago.
Okay.
Really? What were you doing? I mean, you just working and stuff before?
I don't
all
even
this?
know. I think the first time I went out there, it's really funny. The first time I went out there, I just said, hey, it looks interesting, so I'm going to get some disc and go out there. I don't think anybody even introduced me. And then I go play pickup games. It's really funny because I go out there, and I mean, you got people with ear piercings, tattoos all over themselves. Some of them are smoking a joint. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes up, hey, you want to play a pickup game? And I'm doing a round with these people. And this was before I got into the Senate. I was speaker of that. I was speaker when I picked it up. And I picked it up in Raleigh because I lived not far from a disc golf course when I was there. And back then, very few people would pick up who I was. And then they'd always ask me, what you do? I said, I work for the government. And unless they probed, they never knew they were playing disc golf with the Speaker of the House or
That's
Senator.
so funny.
You've got to be in touch with the people. And let me seg that into something slightly more serious. I mean, you are a U.S. Senator. Part of it is representing the people. How do you stay in touch with the people? I assume you would put a priority on your representatives actually knowing the people and what they want.
Yeah, well, one thing, I have an incredible state team. I know all members would say it, but I'd be willing to enter a competition around it. I have probably one of the highest performing state teams in the U.S. Senate. They are all measured by the way I would measure people in a professional environment, where they've been, who they've talked to, cases that they've cleared. Have a wonderful state director. And so that gives me a lot of feedback. But when we go on recess, I make it a point to go out and meet with people. We do a lot of work sessions. I've been working a lot on behavioral health, mental health issues. We've been in crime, and so we're constantly doing work groups, creating task force, and staying in touch with people.
I'd like to see if maybe we could help just one person out, possibly. You, in 2021, there was an announcement you had prostate cancer.
Yeah.
You underwent surgery. You're fine?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you want to talk about the importance of men getting that checked?
Oh, 100%. As a matter of fact, I was publicly critical. I had this discussion, I was on a trip, and Cassidy was with me. He said, man, you came in hot on Lloyd Austin not disclosing that he was sick. I said, yeah. I said, leaders don't get a pass. Mm-hmm. Leaders have to lead. And the stigma of cancer is like the stigma of behavioral health. You can't go and say, we've got to end the stigma, and then whisper it when it happens to you. And in my case, it was prostate cancer. I came out early and said, it's the most survivable. What's most frustrating about prostate is it's the most survivable form of cancer. If you catch it, and you catch it early, which you can through a low-cost PSA test, you can treat it. And so the reason I had a problem with Lloyd Austin is you are the Secretary of Defense for the greatest nation that's ever existed. And if you can act like you're ashamed of your diagnosis, you are likely going to kill somebody because they think they can be ashamed and maybe not even get it treated, or maybe even never get a PSA test. Mm-hmm. So, by God, when you get elected into leadership, you got to get out of your comfort zone, lead by example. I told everybody I had cancer. In my case, I was going to have the prostate removed. And in my case, I've been indetectable cancer for 2 years now.
Well, that's great.
But it's also likely that, I think I've gotten by acting early. Mm-hmm. I'll probably die with it, but I'm not going to die from it. It's very difficult to completely eradicate prostate cancer, but if you get it early, you manage it, it doesn't affect the thing. I have not missed a step since I had that.
This is going to sound completely ignorant, but you know what? I'm sure somebody else has this question. Did you feel like you had cancer? Or are you just told you have it and it's a shock that that's in you? What's that like?
That was, every year I like going to get my physical fitness, get my exam, because I know I'm going to be in fundamentally good shape. I'm active. My at-rest heart rate is somewhere around 50, 51.
Wow.
And it has been really ever since that I picked up. So I'm always going just for that affirmation that I'm a specimen.
Yeah.
Specimens, and so you get that. They say your heart rate's good. You got a 3D scan of your heart. You've got zero plaque, which is almost unheard of for somebody 63 years old. This is all the good news. By the way, your PSA's kind of gone up. We probably ought to do another test. And, it really was up. So now let's do a biopsy. And then they call you up and say you got cancer. Wow. Didn't know. Didn't affect me physically at all.
Interesting.
And that's why the PSA test is so important. Mm-hmm. And if you have somebody in your family who's had prostate cancer and you're a man, you need to start getting tested at age 40. Don't wait till 50. Everybody should start PSA screening as part of their annual checkup when they're 50. But like my son, when he turns 40, I want him to get a PSA test every year because he's at risk.
Okay, listeners, there you go.
And it's the most common form of cancer for men, I think,
It's
right?
the most common form and the most treatable form of
Yeah.
cancer that's ever existed. So
Yeah.
let's just beat it. Let's not be ashamed of it. I mean, let's remove the stigma
Yeah.
and recognize it's no different than getting COVID or any other cancer. Beat it.
Yeah.
Let's get at least one more subject in here before we let you go. You've placed a high priority on making North Carolina a very pro-business state. Well, to do business in, obviously. We have listeners from all over, so let's hear a pitch for North Carolina. What do you think gives North Carolina an advantage? What kind of things do you think you have that maybe need to be changed or could be improved, or you already have that are just great for business?
Well, when I became speaker in 2011, we were about 45th in rankings for preferable places to work.
Down there, yeah.
Over the last 2 years, we've been rated number one by that same rating agency. 2 years in a row. It's almost virtually unheard of that the same state gets it 2 times in a row. We're likely to get it again. When we got in there, I hear everybody talking about I will cut this tax or that tax. I hear everybody talking about it. We very seldom do it here. We did it in North Carolina. We absolutely clawed out regulation cost in our first 2 years. We had the most successful, as measured by Americans for Tax Reform, back when I was speaker in my second term. We eliminated ultimately the corporate tax, which was at 6.9%. We've got the income tax. The high end was 7.75. Now it's sub 5%. And now we're in the top decile for every measure, and we're crushing people when it comes to economic development. We've overtaken Massachusetts for life sciences. We are one of the banking capitals in North Carolina, and you're very seldom going to see any, and I used to do site selection, any site selection firm that doesn't have North Carolina on the map. If you're talking energy sector, manufacturing, life sciences, or financial services, I'd judge them incompetent because I used to do their job, and I know because I used to do their job, our priority was hitting on all those cylinders. And that's why North Carolina is one of the fastest growing and most business-friendly states in the nation, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep it that way.
So cutting taxes and getting the government out of the way is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and we did it. Look, I came in as speaker in the financial crisis. We had a $2 billion hole that we had to fill in 6 months on a $20 billion general fund. We didn't raise taxes. We cut spending, real spending. All these folks up here talk about cutting the rate of growth. We cut real spending. But we also did dramatic permitting and regulatory reform that created so much economic activity in less than a year and a half that economic activity from regulatory reform then laid the groundwork for tax reform that we did in our second term. We didn't look back. And I ran it, as a speaker, I ran it like a business. Members didn't get to play games with messaging bills. I had bans. I had 1,000 bans printed that said jobs, jobs, jobs. And I told my members, you better not come into my office and tell me that you want me to run a bill that has no nexus with creating jobs and creating economic opportunity. Shut it down, made a lot of people mad, but I stand by the results.
And so you went from 45 to first in what period of time again?
About 4 years.
Wow.
So it works.
It does
when you
work.
prove it.
Yeah, it works. And I hear all these folks up here thump their chest on things they do. I saw those same courageous people. They were making promises. We got a majority of these in time. Do you really think we should cut? We cut unemployment benefits. Now, we were at the height of unemployment. We were at 10.4%. And when Obama, if you remember, he was going to extend another 26 weeks. It was going to be a total of 99 weeks. The only state in the nation that didn't take a $750 million check. I made it illegal to expand it. And then with the work of my Republican colleague, we not only were the only state that didn't take the unemployment extension, $750 million during a fiscal crisis, and our unemployment was at 10.4%. We cut the monthly benefit by 25%, and we cut the duration to be indexed to the prevailing rate of unemployment. We were at 10.4%, fourth highest unemployment in the nation. And in 6 quarters, we were at the national average.
Wow.
So it works, but you got to have
Gets people
courage.
back to work,
And
yeah.
I hear everybody up here talking about courage,
Yeah.
but that takes real courage. And I had people not wanting to do it, and we got it done. Then we got tort reform done, medical malpractice reform, all the mechanics that we know. If you have the courage to do it, you're going to take a lot of political heat, but then you're going to measure the results. And we're blowing past a lot of states that we're eating our lunch. And we're going to blow past more because we got some states getting a little crazy on the social side of things. And we're staying right to the right of we're staying right to the right of center. So now I go into an economic development meeting now, and you give me a list of a couple of states or a normal competition. I say, go check where they're headed on this agenda, check where we are, and ask yourself who has political certainty in mind.
Yeah.
How is it working up here? I promise we'll let you go soon. How is it working up here in the speed of getting things done versus when you were in the States?
I remember Roy Blunt asked me that question. We were on the treadmill over the Senate gym, and he said, Tom, you've been here about 9 months now. How would you compare, the being speaker to being a senator? I said, the way I would compare a microwave and a crock pot. We cook things slowly up here. I mean, you can't. I mean, we did med-mal reform and tort reform in 6 months in my first year as speaker. We did broad-based regulatory reform within 9 months. We did all of this unemployment reform thing. These were measured in weeks and days. And one thing you have to realize up here is this is measured in Congresses. You can't get a lot of these heavy lift things done quickly, and you have to be patient. Don't get frustrated. You see business people come up here. They've never been in a legislative body before. They get frustrated because they think things can happen on a dime. They've not really participated in the process. You just got to be patient. You got to be focused. You have to be disciplined. If you do, you can produce a lot of results. And if you don't, you won't. You'll be very frustrated in the process. Pick which one you want to be.
I think our listeners who are not that familiar with how things work, or just the natural question is, why is it so slow up here?
Well, part of it's you got to build consensus. The 60 vote threshold is real. I mean, you get stuff done through unanimous consent, but I'm talking about meaty bills. I've been involved in a couple of bipartisan efforts, and you got to put in the work. You got to build a value proposition. You got to whip votes. It takes a lot of work. And a lot of people think just a good idea should just, sell itself. That's not how it works here. You got people with competing interests. You got another chamber here. You may have different priorities from the White House. You got to get smart, look around corners, skate where the puck's going to be. If you do that, you can be, I feel good about what I've been able to do since I was here. I see a lot of very capable people that are frustrated, but sometimes I almost feel it's like that, right? If they only got it, my ideas would be so good. You're only as good as your ability to get votes. So stop lamenting the fact that people aren't marching to your door to get something done. March to their door and tell them why they should support it. That's it's simple, but people miss it up here.
Let's close with giving you a chance to sell your state a little more outside of the business climate. What's so great about North Carolina?
Oh, man, I live on Lake Norman. Okay, so told you I've lived in 2 countries, 9 states. So I literally was at a position in my career where I could live wherever I wanted to. And I picked North Carolina because I can live on a lake with 520 miles of shoreline and be at the city center of Charlotte or the airport in 25 minutes.
Ooh.
Wow. I live on a lake with a beautiful big water view that I can drive to a beach within 2.5 hours. I live a lake in a major metropolitan area that is an hour and a half from a 4,000-foot elevation, beautiful mountain house that we rent from time to time that will take your breath away. I live in a state that is a purple state, that is a business-friendly state, that's got one of the best university systems by everybody's standards in the country. Our healthcare system is top quartile. We are owning the life sciences space. We are home to some of the largest energy sector companies in the world. We are home to Bank of America and to some of the largest banking institutions in the world. What is not to like?
So a couple things.
I love it.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful state.
That's just off the top of my head. Give me time to put together a PowerPoint.
We'll have you working up here in no time. Senator, anything else you'd like to say?
No, actually, I think it's these sorts of, I think maybe you should have some podcasts. It's sort of a podcast modern version of Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes law.
Yeah.
Maybe you ought to think about some time about take a specific bill and try to explain to people how it became law. I think particularly for people aspiring to become members of the Senate or Congress at some point, if y'all can't do that, if you folks will please just go out to YouTube and watch Schoolhouse Rock. It's still accurate.
Yeah.
I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill.
I love it.
Can we hire you to sing? Well, Senator, you've been a great success, obviously. I think we better take that quite seriously.
Yeah.
It might be something we should do. Senator Thom Tillis from the great state of North Carolina, thanks for being the guest today on The Elephant in the Room.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Sophie, we heard a lot about dogs today. We heard about Cadbury, your dog, but we didn't get into it. What kind of dog is it?
He's a chocolate cocker spaniel.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry. Dogs are people too. Yes.
Yeah. He is a chocolate American cocker spaniel. I would say I borderline am obsessed with him. But who isn't with their pets?
Yeah, I think the proper response is, "Aw."
Correct.
Well, that's great. Hey, we did get some info. Senator Tillis did mention a few times, at least a couple, that he had lived in 2 countries and 9 states. We mentioned all the states. You want to do the reveal on the countries?
Countries, United States, and because it's so foreign, District of Columbia.
There you go. Thanks for listening, everybody. The Elephant in the Room is presented under the direction of U.S. Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming. Our executive producer is Arjun Modi. Our show producer is Carly Rapp. And our technical director is Rashad Smith. Thanks for listening, and until next time, this has been
The Elephant
in the Room.